What is the dumbest thing you've ever received hate for? Story 1. For talking to a guy I met on a dating site not knowing he was in a relationship. Dude was messaging me on a dating app. We met up and he seemed cool. We hung out once. He wasn't my type and we parted on good terms, and then his fiancée called me. I said I was sorry, I had no idea. I stopped talking to the guy instantly, but I still faced 6 to 8 months of harassment from this woman and her friends. Threats of rape. I got told I wouldn't live to see my next birthday. I got told I was fat and a slut. They called me non-stop. They said that they knew where I lived, where I went to uni. I even got threats on my blog that I had set up for Yumi. It was intense. I ended up getting the police involved. From what I know, she stayed with him. But somehow I was in the wrong, even though I had no idea she existed. He did nothing wrong. It was all me. Fucking ridiculous. Story 2. My boyfriend when I was in high school. In retrospect, sure he was a bit of a dud, but he was harmless. Didn't drink or smoke. Did well in school without studying or caring. Kept himself well-groomed, wasn't abusive or anything. Most importantly, we got along well, had a lot in common including art and fantasy, and even bonded over our introversion. But after the first time my cousin met him, which was in passing and was about a 10-minute interaction tops, she told me he was no good and I should break up with him. I was devastated, as her opinion meant a lot to me, but I also realized it was based on nothing given their short interaction. She had no reason to not like him other than she just didn't like the look of him, so I obviously didn't listen. Well, she didn't like that I didn't immediately bend to her command. Everyone's subsequent family gathering, and there was a lot. We were one of those families, became the same, almost like clockwork. We arrive, my cousin pointedly says hello to my family, but ignores me. I try to make conversation with her, since at the previous gathering, she made a stink about not liking her since I don't talk a lot. She also ignores this. Naturally, I become put out and lost interest in trying to talk to a wall, so I stop. She has a couple of glasses of wine. She drunkenly comes to me with a barrage of reasons why I should break up with my boyfriend. The most common ones being he makes you quiet. I have always been quiet, and he makes you not like us. No, you are making yourself unlikable. Rinse, repeat next gathering. My cousin had even convinced her friends to harassing me as well, to a point where I had this person come up to me and say, I think makes you quiet, when it was her second time meeting me, and she had never even met my boyfriend. I had no support from my immediate family either. If I brought it up to my mom at best, I was told it was because she was family and just looking out for me, and at worst was told that my behavior warranted the harassment, that my cousin was right in her evaluation and family is most important, so I should correct these issues by breaking up with my boyfriend. It all really messed me up, as it was so super drilled into my head that family was so important, but I couldn't please them unless I did something I didn't want to do, which was break up with my boyfriend. And if family was so important, where was my familial support in all of this? It came to a head for me when my cousin, in one of her drunken barrages, came up to me and said, and I quote, "Oh, he's an artist? You don't want to date an artist?" To which I responded, "I'm an artist too. Does that mean nobody wants to date me?" In the following moment, she knew she messed up. It was the only time my response actually shut her up. She knew I saw right through her, that her family argument for bullying me held no water anymore. After all, how could she argue that she just cares about me so much and wants me to do the right thing for me, when she doesn't know the literal first thing about me, that I'm an artist? Why, yes, I'm in therapy, lol, and yes, I've talked about this with my therapist. He figures it was never about the boyfriend. It was about control. He never stood a chance regardless of what he did, but I was supposed to just roll over and do whatever my cousin said, and when I didn't, she really didn't like it. Story 3. Not me, but my husband. He has a fondness for bright neon colors, which is so opposite to his quiet, reserved personality that it tickles me to death. So he came home from work. We spent an hour of, "No, what you want for dinner?" He ran and threw some non-work clothes on. Neon yellow-green shirt and navy shorts and his neon orange sneakers and ran to get takeout. The lady in front of him in line turned around, looked my husband up and down, and proceeded to excoriate him for his choice of clothing. How on earth could he go out in public like that? What was he thinking? That doesn't match at all. Those colors are insulting, and his wife should be ashamed of herself for letting him dress like that. My husband, who is normally so polite, looked her up and down and told her he could change clothes, but she'd always be an ugly bitch. I was so proud of him. Though he may have had to convince me to not go driving to find this woman so I could punch her in the nose. Story 4. I was hanging out with some friends and one person there, more of an acquaintance than a friend, and his life has utterly derailed since then. Lost his damn mind when he found out how many different kinds of music I listened to. He was one of those people who works way too hard to let everyone know how many cool and non-mainstream bands he is into. He was a hipster before there were any hipsters. He was also the kind of person who would shame people for not knowing about whatever obscure band he was into at the time. And he got really annoyed with me because I would admit I had never heard of them, and then laugh at him for being a douche about it. So the conversation got into what kinds of music folks were into. I am into a great many kinds of bands. This dude started getting twitchy because I was talking about everything from Iron Maiden to Johnny Cash, with some Tom Waits and Nick Cave, alongside Simon and Garfunkel and Miles Davis. I guess the idea of all of these albums from different genres touching each other insulted his musical purity or something. So when I mentioned I had 4 John Denver albums, he lost his shit. I don't mean he had nasty things to say. I mean he started screaming. His voice cracked. His face was contorted in rage. He threw things. He tried insulting me, but was so out of his mind with perplexed rage that he couldn't form coherent sentences. He just went on and on about how I was a terrible person for liking John Denver. Like he thought I was objectively evil. He was enraged. I had never seen anything like it. Years later, a bunch of friends of mine, many of the same friends, were going to a Dresden Dolls show. As we were preparing, this guy showed up. While we were waiting for The Last of Us to be ready, the conversation naturally turned to music. I mentioned a show some of us had gone to for a band called Sleepytime Gorilla Museum, and this guy was astonished that I even knew who they were. I had been to several of their shows before. He said, "Man, remember when you liked lame stuff like John Denver?" And I said, "I still like John Denver. Poems, Prayers, and Promises is still one of my favorite songs." He lost his shit all over again. Exact same display of mind-blowing rage. The woman whose apartment it was that we were gathering at kicked him out. He has since gone down a dark path of drugs and homelessness, moved out to Seattle, and despite multiple attempts of some of my friends to help him, is still homeless. He's clearly mentally ill, so I feel bad for him, but I still want nothing to do with him. So if you ever see a skinny, twitchy homeless guy in his 40s in Seattle, play it safe and never mention John Denver. Story 5. Taking my son out to play Pokémon Go. He was really into Pokémon. I started playing because it was a fun thing to do with him, and he got really excited when catching them. He'd want to go to parks and play and was always tired and happy when we were done. Sometimes we'd be out walking and playing for hours. Then we were in a park and some old couple came up to us and shouted at him for being outside with a phone. All the hate came out at him, like why can't kids play without phones? How he was wasting his childhood, and how I was a horrible dad for letting him use a phone. I sent my son away to go catch another Pokemon across the area we were in, and I tore into them. I'm generally respectful to others, but I let them have it. Told them they should take their old, irrelevant asshole opinions somewhere else, and to fuck off and leave the park if they won't let others enjoy it. The best part is that the old bat tried to call the cops on me, but she forgot how to unlock her smartphone. The old guy just stood there stunned, like he's never had someone actually talk back to him. Story 6. Wearing a mask. I worked in a grocery store through the pandemic, and I'm in South Dakota, where COVID was never real and Trump is still president. I wore the mask over my face, even before I was told to do it, when it was mandatory for all employees for a week or two. Most of them wore it around their neck. So many customers, every day, were somehow offended by what was on my face. It's not real. It's all fake. It's just the flu. You ain't Chinese. and get that goddamn maxi pad off your face if and you want to talk to me. I don't work there anymore, and I hope all of those people died screaming in horrible pain. I'm sure they didn't. People like that live forever, but I can hope. Story 7. Being too nice. I like to consider myself a very chatty and open person. I love making new friends at work, online, on the street, etc. I will talk about pretty much anything, and very little makes me uncomfortable or angry. Apparently, that is the wrong thing to do. Over the past few years, I've found out more and more that both guys and girls think me being chatty and happy means that I am either trying to sleep with them, steal their partner, or get something from them. I've had so many rumors started about me. People have called me a cheater, that I beat my husband, that I bribed my boss for raises, all because I wanted to befriend people. Truly one of the weirdest things someone has gotten mad at me for. Thankfully, my husband knows I love only him. I don't try to make friends anymore. Now I'm just the office bitch. Story 8. I got cut off by an ex-best friend who got pissed that I commented on his formatting issues on a manuscript he specifically asked me to look over from him. It was a submission for a writing contest, and he wanted to be a writer, a contest that I told him about in the first place. Suddenly, he blocked me on everything, and his girlfriend told me it was because I didn't tell him, "Good job, this is great." Apparently, I was a bad friend and unsupportive. Ick about you, and I'm just some average woman with average writing skills, but slightly above average reading skills. The industry will eat him alive if he couldn't handle me saying he should break up the dialogue into separate paragraphs. Story 9. As a wheelchair user, I often advocate for better accessibility for everyone. I'd get hate from both non-disabled and disabled people for that. The reason from non-disabled folks is obvious. Sometimes it's the feeling that improved accessibility for disabled people is a threat to able-bodied people's accessibility and rights. Not sure why people think that way. The disabled hate is a bit weirder. There is a common problem in the disabled community where people's views about accessibility are solely based on their own experiences while ignoring others' needs. For example, I often come across wheelchair users who advocate for accessible parking spots to be only for wheelchair users and against the idea that people with knee, back, or hip problems should have a right to those spots. Another one, which I encountered yesterday, involves a manual wheelchair user spewing anger at me for suggesting that we build better ramps because he claims I could opt the curbs so you can too. Except if you use a power wheelchair or scooter, or if you have trouble with steps, that doesn't work and is downright dangerous or impossible. I run an accessibility consulting company, and it is amazing how much heat I get from disabled folks because they think I recommend too much. And by that, they mean that I keep recommending things that they personally don't need because of their own specific disability. Obviously if you use a scooter, tactile indicators for blind folks is not going to be relevant to you, but it is relevant to blind folks. Anyways, I'm on a rant now, so I'll stop.